بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت فلا أقسم بالخنس الجوار الكنس والليل إذا عسعس والصبح إذا تنفس إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بضنين وما هو بقول شيطان رجيم فأين تذهبون إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the sun with its spacious light is folded up, when the stars fall, losing their luster, when the mountains vanish like a mirage, when the she-camel 10 months with young are left untended, when the wild beasts are herded together, when the oceans boil over with a swell, when the souls are sorted out, when the female infant buried alive is questioned for what crime she was killed, when the scrolls are laid open, when the world elevated is unveiled, when the blazing fire is kindled to fierce heat, and when the garden is brought near, then shall each soul know what it has put forward. So verily I call to witness the planets that recede, go straight or hide, and the night as it dissipates, and the dawn as it breathes away the darkness. Verily, this is the word of the most honorable messenger, endued with power, with rank before the Lord of the throne, with authority there, and faithful to his trust. And O people, your companion is not one who is possessed. And without doubt he saw him in the clear horizon. And without doubt he saw him in the clear horizon, meaning Angel Gabriel, he saw him in the clear horizon. Neither doth he withhold grudgingly a knowledge of the unseen. This means that he is not stingy, the Nabi is not stingy in giving his knowledge of the unseen to us. Nor is it the word of an evil spirit, accursed. So where are you going? فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Verily, this is no less than a message to all of the worlds, to whoever among you wills to go straight. For he shall not will except as Allah wills, the cherisher of the worlds. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أصحابه المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين. May Allah bless our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his purified household, all of the messengers and prophets and his select companions. So tonight, I wanted to, inshallah, have more of a workshop session with you guys instead of a lecture. But before we take out that whiteboard and I ask someone to be a scribe, I just want to remember, today I was just remembering a very famous hadith, but it's so deep, and it's something that we have to always remember. And this hadith is as-sabr, patience, ra'sul iman. Patience is the head of faith. As if faith were a body, iman were a body, patience would be the head of that body. Meaning that, okay, like if you have a body, your finger falls, your finger gets cut, you're still alive. Right? But the head is essential. Once the head is cut, it's over. So patience is that pillar. Pillar of what? Of iman. Remember, does anyone remember we discussed iman? What, not to make it like a pop quiz, but what was that? What was that iman? We spoke about the root letters of it. And if you need a hint, I can give a hint. And then I'll have you, whoever remembers it can raise their hand. What iman comes from. Okay, translation, quick translation is faith. The root letters were Hamza, Mim, Nun, Amana. Shall I remind us? MashaAllah, MashaAllah, brother, sister Amina, MashaAllah.
Like trust, loyalty, trustworthy loyalty, honest, true.
Now, what you're describing is more of the tawakkul. The tawakkul. But there's a relationship.
I'm trying to think. I can't remember that.
Alhamdulillah, thank you for pushing yourself. There's barakah in that in itself. Alhamdulillah, brother. Waqar, mashallah.
Integrity.
Integrity. Okay, now we're getting closer to the meaning a little bit. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, so we know that our Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family is called as-Sadiq al-Amin. Al-Amin. Amin means trustworthy. And we know that a place in Arabic that is safe is Amin. And actually, Amina, your name, Amina is trustworthy. And so the meaning of this word comes from safety, security, protection. So why is the Prophet called Al-Amin? You give him something, and that thing is safe and protected with him. It's right. So he's Al-Amin. That thing is safe with him. You don't have to worry about him giving it to someone else. A place that is Amin is a place that is safe. Amina, safety, protection. And so Iman comes from that, meaning that it means that when you have true Iman, you are truly protected by Allah. You have a force field, spiritual force field around you. This is true Iman. Because you give, and that's where it kind of does wrap into what Sister Amina was saying. You give everything to Allah, and so therefore Allah protects you. And this is a reality it's a spiritual reality that Allah wants us to be aware of. So in order to have that divine protection, to stay under that cloak, that divine cloak, you have to have sabr, you have to have patience. Especially in these times, we live in a crazy world, right? And we're going against the current. And that requires, inshallah, patience and strength. So I tell myself and I tell you guys that not to despair, to always have patience, to keep moving forward. That's the key of us being under that divine protection. That is Iman. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I need a scribe. Like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do.
I can't, but I'll start bringing it out.
The whiteboard?
Yeah, I could be after the baby all the time.
Oh, mashallah. Okay, so we're going to discuss the concept of the oneness of God, of Allah. And just to get to know it a little better, and why we believe in just one God. Besides the fact that we feel it, that it's obvious in the fitra there's one God. We're going to go a little bit Hausawi today. We're going to go a little academic, and kind of like get into the proofs of the oneness of God. And after we have that session, if we have the tawfiq, if we have the blessing to do it, then we can get into something else, which is the sanctity of the Prophet's household, and a proof for that in the Quran, which is a very, very interesting proof. So, who will be the person who I speak and they are the master of the marker and can kind of illustrate me sometimes and write down important words I'm saying? It's not that complicated.
One of the brothers that doesn't have kids would be great.
Imran, mashallah, salawat for brother Imran, mashallah. Okay. Let me get a. Alright, so we have I guess you could draw a stick figure. However you want to do this. We have a person with a cane, and we have a person without a cane. Okay? That's a short cane. It's got like, there we go. Alright. There we go. Yeah, it's just normal stick figure. Person without a cane. Okay, so, now, these two people, who is, in terms of, I guess you could write this too, what I'm saying, in terms of walking, I guess you could write this question. Who is, of these two, which one of these two is more perfect in terms of walking, and like running, walking? Which of the two? You guys can raise your hands. Whoever wants to say it. Brother Marcus.
The one without the cane.
The one without the cane. Do we agree with that? Does anyone say the one with the cane is better at walking, running, using their feet?
That's debatable.
It's debatable? Okay. So, it's debatable? Okay, we need to get past this point. Okay, how's that debatable?
Like if you have a disability or something, then you have to work harder to be able to do what you do. So you're actually probably better at it than some other people. Like the people who run that are missing their leg and they have the artificial leg and they win races.
Yeah, but because they have to work harder, they're not as perfect in terms of, like, I'm just
saying it's arguable.
Okay, so, the reason why, okay, go ahead, sister.
Is the cane for fashion?
No, the cane is not for fashion. It is not for fashion. That was a good one.
How do you define perfect?
Who has the ability to walk better? The regular person. Simple terms. Okay, anyone else? Have we gotten past that point? I mean, I know we're in a very liberal time where we can't say that the person with the cane doesn't have the ability to walk as the person without the cane, but the reality is that the person with the cane is a handicap, and it's harder for them to walk than the person without the cane. Right? That's why we have more mercy on that person, and this or that. He's weaker. Okay.
You get the seat when somebody stands up in the bus, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's exactly it. Or if someone is pregnant, has a very, a lot of weight to carry, it's harder for them to walk because they're carrying more, and they need more mercy. Okay, so the question here. Why is the person with the cane less? Why is the person with the cane less perfect in terms of walking? In terms of walking, why? What is it? You've all said, okay, it's true. It's obvious. Okay, he has the cane. Other person. What makes it? What makes him less perfect?
You can't walk without the cane.
Exactly. He can't walk well at least, without the cane. So that means, and this is a key word here, he depends on the cane. Alright? So he depends on the cane. Dependence. So because he depends on the cane, in terms of walking, he's less perfect because he can't do it. He's less independent. He can't do it on his own. And the person who doesn't have the cane is more perfect in terms of walking because they can do it on their own. They don't depend on the cane to do it. They're more independent. So here we have dependence. So, okay, Brother Imran, we could put weakness equals dependence. Or you could do it the other way around. It doesn't matter. Dependence equals weakness, weakness equals dependence. Bear with me, guys. No, this is academic. We gotta flex the mind tonight, inshallah. So, dependence is weakness, and then let's say this equals, one more thing, Emerald. Dependence equals imperfection. Imperfection.
You can't say imperfection. You can say like less able.
Less able, which is less perfect. You can say less perfect. Put less perfect. My bad. I sent them. Less.
You say it's less able.
We're too liberal. We're too liberal. It's less perfect. Look, if there's something that is not as good as something else, it's less than that. This is I really think
if you think a little bit outside of the box, though, the guy with the cane probably has an injury from like running marathons.
Brother, what you're doing is you're going into the realm of what's called istisna. If you're putting because of this and that, this is good. Life is dynamic, but there are gradations of completion of things, right? So someone is weaker than someone else. My arm is much weaker than many other arms, right? Because the muscle's weaker, right? This is important to have these things just clear in a simple sense. So dependence. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay. You don't have to say it.
I'm with you.
Okay. So weakness, dependence, less able. Now, independence. The more independent because he's more independent, he's closer to perfection in terms of walking. Now think about all of creation. All of creation is dependent. Right? Right now, we're dependent on time, space. I'm dependent on my tongue to say this to you. You're dependent on your ears to hear what I'm saying. Everything, every particle in creation is dependent on another particle. Creation is a complete chain of dependency. There's nothing in creation that is not dependent. So, if everything is dependent, that means that everything is really, in reality, weak in some sense, because it's not independent. You kind of get that? Is that clear? Farshad's looking at me with a face like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Okay, so now when it comes to Allah, this is the difference between Allah and creation. Allah is not dependent on anything. And creation is dependent always on something else. And that's why we say Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater. Allahu Akbar doesn't mean Allah is the greatest, because there's no end. Allah is infinitely greater than any concept we understand. And so what happens when we say that, let's just say Allah came down as a man. Just say Allah is a human being. What happens? Instead of just saying Astaghfirullah, what happens? you see what happens? We say that God became a human being, and what does he become? Dependent. Dependent on what? On time, on space, on his body parts, on everything. Right? He has to think. Even think. Allah doesn't like depend on a mind like we do. Like he learns. He doesn't have knowledge and then gains it and has stages. Allah is infinitely perfect knowledge, perfect everything. Perfectly independent. Right? So the second you say that Allah is a man, it's no longer the concept of Allah. The concept of creation. Okay? Now let's say that, let's go straight to like the Trinity. Let's say Allah has 3 manifestations of Allah. So you have said there's 3 manifestations. What would happen? I guess, if you could draw 3 circles.
Independent of one another?
See, that's the thing. There we go. Let's draw 3 circles. Let's just say the Trinity, concept of the Trinity.
Do you want to do that
No, we could do that, even if it's a Venn diagram. Alright, so what would be the issue with the Trinity? If you say, well, it's all God, but it's in 3 pieces. But it's all God. Learning what we learned about independence, dependence.
Well, one of them is creation.
Alright, so you're ruling one out? Because it's creation, that means it's dependent. Because we said if he's a man, then he's dependent. Alright, so let's say this is the Jesus part. Let's rule this out. Alayhi salam. Now let's just say there's 2, which is the holy... What is it?
What is the Logos anyway?
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit.
What do they mean by that? 'Cause is that...
Well, it's a manifestation of Allah. Whatever it means, it's
but
some
if it's
type
like
of...
a soul or a spirit that's also created. Right? Our souls are not created. Allah created
They're
all of
definitely
them.
created.
So then,
It's the same thing, falling to the same trap.
Yeah.
And what would it be? Why would it be? Because it's what?
dependent.
The Holy Spirit shares messages from God to people, so the Holy Spirit is dependent on God.
On God, right? So then you see how that dependency, so when you erase that, becomes what? Just Allah. The independent. Right? And this is why when... Alright, so I have a question. Let's just say this. Say someone says, well... Because the explanation from a theologian who's Christian might say this. Well, it's a mystery. We believe in one God, we believe in the Trinity, but it's a mystery. We can't explain it. And they'll say, you Muslims have mysteries too. You guys believe that like on the Day of Judgment, you'll go across this sirat, you go across this like skinny thread, and you believe in all sorts of stuff that are, you never heard the sirat. Sometimes if you're thin, like the sirat is like as skinny as like a piece of hair. Or many things. We have beliefs that seem very like impossible. So he says, you have impossible beliefs, so we have an impossible belief. So why are you dissing our impossible belief that seems impossible? You also have impossible beliefs. How would we argue that when he's arguing the Trinity?
But I would say that this is a fundamental belief to the religion. So things that are less fundamental can have more mystery or uncertainty, but when it comes to like the pillars of the belief, there needs to be clarity, I think.
Okay. That's partially true.
Can you repeat what you just said? I couldn't.
Oh,
Sorry. I was saying that it's like a very basic and fundamental part of the religion. So it's something that I think maybe would be more clarity on versus things that are like based on hadith or other things like that.
That's a good point, but that's not completely where we're at. What we're looking for. All right, here's the difference, guys. We have what are called things that are essentially impossible. We have things that are called seemingly impossible. For example, if I say there's a tree that's speaking, like that's impossible. But if I say 1 + 1 = 5, that's essentially impossible. You see the difference? 1 + 1 = 5, essentially impossible. But when I say that there's a tree that flies, that's, it's not necessarily essentially impossible. This is that difference. When we say that three that God is what, completely independent or dependent? God is completely, Allah is completely independent. Then what happens when we say that He's three? That means that we're saying that the independent is the dependent. You see what I'm saying? It's like saying 1 + 1 = 5. Complete contradiction. It's an essential impossibility. And if it's essentially impossible, then we're like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. And especially when you're talking about the Creator. Okay, so it's okay. Salawat from Marcus. Salawat from Brother Marcus. Marcus is a teacher. I'm a teacher. Well, was retired. So, and he knows the struggle. That's all I'm saying. All right.
Hopefully, you guys have an easier time reading my handwriting than my students.
Subhanallah. All right. Any questions about this dependence, independence, oneness of God? Is it completely clear to you guys? Is it good? All right, cool. So now, let's move on to the next theme, which is about the Ahlul Bayt. So, Marcus, if you can write down this ayah. All right, stay. And then, no, stay, not stay.
Can you write it in black? Sorry, it's kind of hard to see it there. Not perfect, but better.
Oh, you giving this brother back? Only teaching all day, like in Oakland schools, like you. All right. So, say that. And then, did you hear his response though? He said, "Only Allah is perfect." Subhanallah, subhanallah. All right. So say, I ask no reward of you. I ask no reward of you for it. All right, let's stop there. This right here, the Prophet, this is by the way, this is Surah Shura, ayah 23. The Prophet is saying to his companions, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he's saying, and this say means, this is God, this is Allah saying, stay. Allah's telling the prophets. Anytime it says, you hear the word qul in the Quran, it means that Allah is telling the Prophet to say something. Qul, hu Allahu ahad. Qul, that qul means stay. So Allah is telling the Prophet to say this. These are the words He's telling him to say. I ask no reward of you. He's talking, as the Prophet's talking to his companions. I ask no reward of any of you for it. For it, what is it? The whole mission, the whole tabligh, meaning the whole missionary work, his whole life dedicated to Islam, Islam spreading the oneness of God, all of what it is that is Islam. And then he says, except for the love of the near ones. Except for the love of the near ones. Okay, so this is like probably the same thing you guys think, what does that mean? What are the near ones? And the same thing, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ also thought the same thing. They were like, okay, what is that? Who are the near ones? What are the near ones? This is called fil qurba in Arabic. Qurba. They're like, what is al qurba? What are the near ones? And in the hadith, both Shia and Sunni hadith, the Prophet says they are my Ahlul Bayt. Right? They are Imam Ali, Fatima Zahra, Imam Hassan, and Imam al-Hussein. Salawat for Ahlul Bayt, please. So he's saying, look, I ask no reward of all of this struggle I've gone through, of all of this sacrifice for all of mankind, and believing jinn as well, except that you love the Ahlul Bayt. By the way, the narration is not weak at all. There's so many narrations that he said that this verse is referring to as Ahlul Bayt that is called tawatur, meaning that there's so many that you're like sure that it's true. It's very, very, very strong proof. This is Surah Shura, ayah 23. Shura, Shura, and then ayah 23. Okay. Now, let's analyze this. If the Prophet had said, for example, I ask you, the only reward I ask you of this, all my struggle, is that you love my city, that you love Mecca. Let's just say he said that. What would we do? What would one want to help do for Mecca? Like if he said, I leave you my city, love my city, what would happen? Develop it? Maybe move there? Okay, that's good, because this mawadda, this love has to do with being near something, that's true. What else? Would you clean it? Would you keep it dirty? You'd make it a holy place. Exactly. You'd make it a holy place. Okay? And if it were like his cattle, let's just say, he's like, take care of my sheep. Then you feed the sheep, right? You take care of the sheep, etc. Okay. Question now is, what's the difference between a city or cattle or whatever inanimate thing it could be, and saying my near relatives, my Ahlul Bayt? What's the difference between those two? Let's think about some differences.
I would say that, like, loving and caring for a thing or object, gives you power over it, or you're choosing to take care of it on your own power versus love of the near ones. You kind of have to subordinate yourself to them, and it's instead of like process of taking care, it's a process. I think a process of like humbling yourself because they're not things they can have an effect over you. And
Okay.
I guess for people who are not as if you're not as strongly into the belief, it's easier to take care of things. I guess.
Okay, so they have an influence on you. Anyone else?
You're asking the difference between caring for an inanimate thing versus living people?
Yeah.
I mean, they're very different. People need attention, food and water, and they need, most of us like to socialize and converse and
Okay, so the Prophet's telling you to love them, so you would want to converse with them, right?
Yeah, because
so converse with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Attention.
Okay, attention. All right.
But versus an inanimate thing, it would be just making sure that maybe you don't get squatters there, or people dumping trash there.
Right. Okay.
It's more about respect and reverence, and
Right.
it's more like maintenance.
So that's nice. Yeah, respect, reverence. Nice. Okay, so the truth is, Marcus went into a whole other zone here. This is cool. He's got a teacher. Maybe maintenance. Alright, so that's the problem.
I teach French, not English.
I teach Espanol. I can spell it in Spanish. Okay, so alright guys, the truth is this. The question I asked really is actually, the answer is very different. The difference between the Prophet and Allah telling the Prophet to command for us to love his Ahlul Bayt and him having commanded us to love inanimate objects is that the Ahlul Bayt are human beings, and that means that human beings can do evil. Human beings can do wrong. Human beings can be murderers, or human beings can be very good people. The human being has freedom of what? Freedom of Freedom has free will. I meant to say free will. Not freedom of. The human being has free will to an extent. And that's the main thing. We're like, we can choose to be, I can be really nice to Emerald today, and then tomorrow we'll just have some beef. You know what I mean? May Allah protect us. But that's reality. So, but think about this. Like, this part right here is like the point where I really want you guys to, I want it to click for us. Allah Ta'ala, let's turn this back. Allah Ta'ala asks, He says to the Prophet, He says, say. Allah is telling the Prophet to tell us that love only these people. People who can do bad things. Would a wise God tell you to love evil? Would a just and wise God tell you to love evil? Even for a second, like why would Allah tell you to? Allah doesn't. I said one of our beliefs is that we believe in the adala of Allah. We don't say, well, Allah can throw someone in the hellfire who doesn't deserve it because He's Allah. We don't have that belief. That's another belief of Ashra. Let's call it another school of thought. Our thing is no, Allah is just. Allah, if He tells you to love something, it has to be something that is good, not something that's bad. So what does it tell you about these people? What if this person, like, okay, so it's Imam, who's he telling us to love? Imam Ali, Fatima Zahra, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. At the time, this is Ahlul Bayt. So we're told to love them. Does that mean, what if for a second Imam Ali, and it's wajib for me to love them? It's wajib for me to love them. What if Imam Ali for a second does something bad, makes a sin? But it's still wajib for me to love him, love that sin he's doing? That would make sense, right? So what does it tell you about Ahlul Bayt? What's the conclusion? If Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is telling me to love these people, then what does it tell you about those people?
I don't want to say that they're perfect, just because we established earlier that perfection only belongs to Allah, right? So they're very special people.
And okay, when we say perfect,
And they're not independent. They still
no, they're not independent. They depend on Allah, but
they're pure.
they're pure, meaning that when they have the choice to go right and wrong. If they were to go wrong, it would be Allah telling you to love wrong. And Allah wants me, that wouldn't make sense. How could Allah tell you to love wrong? So it shows you that they're pure. But of course, they're dependent. We love them the most because they realize how dependent they are on Allah. And that's why they only choose to do right. Because they realize, I'm just a slave of Allah. Allah is the owner of everything. So, do you see here how we realize that through Allah telling us to love them, that in reality it shows us that they're saints. Saints isn't a Christian word. Look at the etymology of the word. It's like from sanctus, it's from Latin, and it means sacred. It has nothing to do with Christianity. So we can use the word saints. Nothing wrong. They're the saints of Islam, right? At this time.
I had a hard time with when I became Shia. I was Sunni for 2 years when I first converted, and I had a very hard time with Imam because I coming from a Catholic background and the whole saint thing where like people pray to them and they light candles for them and all that. I was like very hesitant to like love them and revere them and all of that. It was very hard, but it's been a while now. Alhamdulillah, I've learned, and it's different than the saint in Catholicism. But I think if you don't use it in that sense, then saint can be a word that you can use.
Maybe we could have a debate on whether or not saint should be. Probably people will be like, don't use saint. Don't use saint. There's too much baggage to the word.
But I was just trying to say that saint it's not, Christianity doesn't own the word saint. We can debate whether saint would be appropriate in the Islamic context for tabligh, for missionary work, and this type of thing. Okay? So, the takeaway from this session is that the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam are what? According to this logic.
Revered by Allah as close to
Meaning, not love this essence, this good essence, because you're still loving good. But love this, like, love evil? Does it make sense for Allah to say love evil?
No.
Okay.
Allah would not allow that.
Yeah, I think Allah would not allow that.
Yeah, so I guess like, I don't know, in case there, this is how I perceive like the whole discussion, and then, you know, if it helps others or not, you know, fair. But my understanding of kind of what we're discussing is that these elevate the figures that are, you could say, through Hadith, we've validated that's who Allah is talking about. These figures, going back to what you said, like these human beings, right? Aside from them being tried and tested, they will never go against the will of Allah. Their will is always in accordance to Allah. Allah's will is the ultimate will, of course, but them on a creation level, on a human being level, they will never act out of the will of Allah. Whatever would make Allah pleased is what they have done. But even on an application level, like while they were living, they never did anything that would go against the will of Allah. And if they did, that would contradict this ayat, which obviously what we're saying here is that Allah, there is no contradiction with God. So that's kind of my...
Very good, yeah. The will of Allah is, they're in alignment with Allah Ta'ala's will. That's why He tells us to love them, because they're in alignment with what He wants. Okay? So, alhamdulillah, that's it. I just wanted to get these two main concepts here about Allah being the perfect, independent, non-dependent on everything. Creation is dependent on Allah. And that the Ahlul Bayt, this right here is not an argument for following the Ahlul Bayt. We have other things that tell us and show us ways to follow the Ahlul Bayt. Why it's wajib to follow them. The ayah is saying it's wajib to have love for them. But if it's wajib to have love for them, then it means that they are in alignment with Allah, because we only love what Allah loves. Which means that what they do is what Allah loves. So it shows you that they have a certain sainthood, certain sacredness, that they're like, right? It gives us, it's a strong proof that of their maqam, which is like their rank, spiritual rank. Okay, so I ask us to make Fatiha for the people of Yemen who are under attack in the Ramadan, children being bombed, unfortunately, mangled, the people of Palestine who are being starved, and all of the oppressed in the world, especially even in this country, which we know there are so many oppressed here as well. Please recite the Fatiha with, firstly, the salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Please give us all to our guest speaker. Thank you so much for coming these past couple weeks. It was amazing. The feedback was really nice. Alhamdulillah. May Allah reward you for blessing our center and giving us so much knowledge.